Hello everyone and welcome back to Callsign Charlie Models for day 5 and 6 of the Lukgraph Caproni Ca.3 build in 1/32 scale. And in last week we got a lot of the test fitting done, and we started off with the engine wiring. And then this week what we're going to be doing is we are going to be getting the putty done on the wings. We're going to finish wiring the engines using a different lead wire. And then after that, we're going to actually get primer down on this guy so we can start moving forward with the actual paint on this project. So let's get down to the workbench. Let's get to work. I will see you in 1 second. Alright, so we are starting off at the workbench, getting some putty on the wing joint areas that we had dealt with a couple weeks ago using the Perfect Putty. It's a water-based putty, which is very nice. Once it's dry, you can just clean it up with a wet Q-tip, as you're going to see here in a little bit. The one issue with this that I have is when you first open the bottle, it comes out very smooth, very nicely, little tension required, just like squeezing your toothpaste in the morning. But as the tube gets older, this is only a couple days old, really. I've only used this a couple times, and it does get more and more difficult to squeeze it out because it does start to dry in the tip. So one thing that you can do to alleviate that issue is put a wet Q-tip or a wet toothpick down in the nozzle to help re-moisten the putty. As you can see here, I'm really having to squeeze the putty out of the tube. Alright, we're going to get this wing done, and then I'm going to do the rest of the wings off camera so we can get those taken care of and shorten up the video just a little bit instead of having to do repeat, because it's the same thing over and over again. Alright, now finishing up with this, we are going to be moving on to the engines. In the last video, we used some wire to do the spark plug cables and all that. That was an absolute royal pain in the butt because it was a very stiff wire. So now we are using lead wire. This is nice because it's nice and soft. It's easy to work with for the most part. Sometimes, especially with the very thin stuff, this is a 0.2 millimeter lead wire. It is pretty brittle when it's this thin, so you have to be very careful when grabbing this with tweezers, because even a tough squeeze with the tweezers will break this in half. So we're getting it all put into the engine with the pre-drilled holes that I did last week, and then we're going to start bending them and shaping them into place. And again, the sad thing about this is that the cables run behind that bar, but there's no way to actually thread the cables underneath that bar. So we're gonna just have to tuck everything in behind and then glue it into place, trying to hide as much of the glue as possible. There were a couple times that there was more glue on the toothpick than I thought, and it kind of flooded the area, so I had to thin it out and push it around on the engine. But once a primer and everything is on, you can't tell that there's extra super glue on there. So getting these bent back behind, making it look like they actually go behind that part. This is one of those parts I was talking about where there's more super glue on the toothpick than what I thought. And then we're going to knock out the other two engines off camera, so that way you guys don't see the same thing for 3 times total. Sorry, I went a little bit off camera right here, and you can see almost the top of my head. Just trying to get these done using my magnifier that I got off of Amazon for like 25 bucks. Awesome. As long as you keep the light charged, is great. Now we're going to be adding the cables to the, I think this is the distributor cap right here. So we're going to get all the lead wire attached into the holes, and once that is done, we can start bending them and cutting them to length. I cut them extra long so that way I have room to play with when I'm trying to get them into place. Alright, now time to start bending them into place. So we're going to get it into place, and then we're going to cut off the excess. We're going to do that with all of them. I just noticed that my razor blade is in need of replacement, so later on today I am going to be replacing my razor blade, because if it's dull enough to be difficult to cut that lead wire, it definitely needs to be replaced. Accidentally pulled the wire out of the hole, so I had to re-glue it. Gonna let that set for a little bit while I mess around with the other wires, and then by the time I'm ready to get back to that one, the glue should be dry enough for me to mess with. Right now you can kind of see what's going on with the wires, and with the black primer on you really can't see them. What's really going to show up is when all the paint is done and we do the detail painting on this. That's when the spark plug wires and these distributor wires are really gonna show up. Alright, so that's one engine all done, and we're going to go ahead and do the other two engines, like I said, off camera. Dealing with a little bit of super glue again, more on the end of the toothpick than what I thought, but like I said, when the primer is on it, you can't tell. Alright, so moving on to the AirScale bomb rack and bombs. Peter from AirScale printed these out for me, and these look absolutely great. I did get the discounted version because some of these were broken off of some of the bombs were broken off, so I was able to get it at a discount. Now, cutting this off of the supports really raised my heart rate because these parts are so fragile. As you'll see here in a second, that one piece in the bottom of the screen right there that connects to the fuselage pinged off into oblivion. I could not find it anywhere. I searched for a good 30 minutes. There it goes. Pinged off into oblivion. It's now in the land of the missing socks from the dryer. So we're getting the rest of everything cut off here. I'm only going to show one side of here getting cut off, and then after that, when it's all said and done, I'll have it on camera with the finished product. But the 3D print supports were actually very nice. The connection points were thin, and I only had a couple of parts break off. I don't know if it was because of the print or because of my cutting, but just very carefully. It does look like I am kind of going at it fast, but that is because this video is sped up by about 4 times here. So just divide this speed by 4, and that is actually how slow I am doing. This took me a good hour and a half, 2 hours just to get this one piece off of the 3D print supports. This piece on the belly of the aircraft, when it's all loaded up with all the bombs, is going to look spectacular. I cannot wait to see all of this assembled on here. Alright, so we are almost done cutting off this one side, and then we're going to get to see the finished product all off of the 3D print block here in about 3 seconds. Alright, there we go. There's the finished product. You can see how nicely detailed, how thin this is, especially the sway braces for the bombs. Like I said, a few of them broke off, but I can replace that with some styrene fairly easily. And I'm sorry for the shaking, but alright, so now we're moving on back to the putty, trying to get that off of the wings just with a wet Q-tip right here. And as you can see, you just wipe it right off. Comes off. This sat for a good 12 hours and got fully cured. You can do it when it's either wet or hard. Either way, it comes off with the wet Q-tip. Obviously, when it's wet, it's a lot easier for cleanup, but then you have the issue of shrinkage and all that. So we're going to continue on with the other portion of the wing, getting that all done, and these fill the gaps perfectly. Now, I would not do this on a load-bearing part because it is pretty weak. It's not a very strong putty, but it does do a good job on filling minor gaps. Like I said, with it being a load bearing, so if you remember, we have those very thick brass rods running all the way through the wing that supports the weight of this. So I'm not worried about the wing bending or anything like that to create any cracks in the putty. Alright, and up next here in a little bit, we are going to be moving over to the paint booth. We're almost done cleaning up the putty. I'm going to do the rest of the wings off camera, and then we'll be moving right to the paint booth. Alright, so paint booth, using our Stynylrez black primer for this in the airbrush. We are airbrushing the main cockpit tub right here. Goes on pretty smoothly. I was having issues with it clogging my airbrush for some reason today. Definitely was a little bit of a battle, more than usual, to get the spraying done, especially after a while. When I first poured it into the airbrush, went down nice and smooth. It was after about an hour or two of doing airbrushing that it started to clog the airbrush. I had to pull everything out, clean the airbrush, and respray on everything. Now getting the horizontal stabilizer sprayed, and I'm doing a quick dry for the paint right here, just shooting air at it, and it dries really quickly. So that way I can flip it over, grab the other side, and prime the other side. And the other problem with this is when I was moving this off to the side, I dropped it and I broke the elevator off, so I'm going to have to re-glue that on. Luckily it was a clean break, no real parts broke off that aren't easily replaced on it. So now we're moving on to the booms again with the primer, getting it on, and then we're going to air dry it real quick, or speed dry it, so we can flip it over and do the reverse side of it where I'm grabbing it. I already primed the other one off camera. So both of these are now done. And then we're going to be moving on to the wings, I think. Or no, the engine first. So first engine's done. And now we're just priming that on. It's going to be getting painted a bare metal. I'm not sure which shade I'm going to be using from AK Extreme Metals. We'll figure that out here in a couple weeks. Alright, now onto the wing. As you can see, that putty looks nice and filled. No issues with that. Didn't have to sand anything, so we don't have to worry about losing any of the stitching detail or the rib detail on the wings. So we're going to have this looking really nice when it's all said and done. Now flipping it over to the underside. Again, priming. You can see that gap disappearing right there with the putty. And just laying it on by this point I'm having issues with the airbrush and the primer, so we're gonna start seeing me battle it a little bit. Alright, and lastly we got to prime the bomb rack. Alright, so that's it for today, and I will see you here in 1 second. Alright, so that's it for the Caproni today. Got a good amount done. Finished up with the majority of the primer off camera, and I still have a few more of the very tiny parts and also all the bombs to primer as well. So looking forward till next week. Looks like we're going to start finally getting some color on this thing. I'm going to start off with the wood grain first, getting the base colors for the wood, and then a matte coat onto that stuff, so that way I can come in and do the oils for the wood grain the next day. So, and then we'll start moving on to all the other colors like painting the engines and the fabric and all that stuff in the coming weeks. But we are starting to get some color, and this thing is going to start coming to life here very shortly. Once we get all the main paints done, we can start doing some assembly on that. Anyways, I want to thank everybody for watching and sticking around. I hope you guys are enjoying this, and I hope you guys stick around for next week, because next week is really going to start getting fun. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. If you haven't yet, don't forget to like and subscribe, comment down below, hit the bell button for notifications of when I post future videos, like the next part of this one, or any of the other 5 builds I have going on right now, or I'm sorry, 6 builds I have going on right now. So, until next time, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.